Howdy, welcome to Horticulture Innovators, a podcast series where we will explore impactful innovations in horticulture. I'm Amit Dingra, your host. I'm a professor and head of the Department of Horticultural Sciences at Texas A&M University. In each episode, we'll explore the inspiring stories of the pioneers who are contributing to sustainability, wellness, and food security through their amazing work in horticulture. Howdy, and welcome.
Thank you. Howdy.
Well, Brad, how does the homecoming feel like? I mean, this is your home department, and you graduated from here in 1994.
94. That's right. Yeah,
Awesome.
It's great to come back. You know, I make it back every so often throughout the year, so it's good to see the change and the transformation and just the student body and how it's changed. It's a lot bigger than it was when I was here for sure. I still kind of know my way around, but a lot of the roads on campus I can't get where I used to. But it's great to be back.
Well, we're very grateful that you agreed to join us for this podcast, Horticulture Innovators, where we really want to learn about people's journeys, how they've innovated internally in their careers to get where they are, as just an example for our students, but also to learn where are we going next. I mean, you're obviously a leader in the industry, and so we'll start with your journey, what came along in your career, and how you became the CEO and president for Magnolia Nurseries.
Yeah, okay. So it's a long story. I'll try to give the short version, I guess. So I grew up in the agriculture industry, grew up on a agricultural demonstration farm called the Luling Foundation, and got my original seed planted in horticulture, even though I didn't realize it, because I worked a lot with animals, and some in the garden, some with pecans and peaches. And so I had that seed planted, and then I came to A&M, and I actually had no intention of horticulture. And so I wanted to go into biomedical science, wanted to go into medicine, wanted to get away from waking up earlier, walking the chickens, and picking weeds in the garden. So first 2 years I had no classes related to horticulture, agriculture. However, I was in the MSc one day, and they had a showing of all the student groups, and the horticulture club was there. You know what, that looks interesting. I remember plants, and so I joined the club and started participating in the meetings, and took Dr. Reed's class, 201, and then I realized that seed that was planted actually was germinating, and realized that I needed to come back into agriculture, and chose horticulture, and then the rest is history. I started out actually working after I graduated. I received my master's here as well in horticulture. I started working in the extension service, so AgriLife now. That's down in the South Texas Valley. Spent a couple years with that, and then I went straight into industry. And I've been in nursery production, ornamental production, really since the late 90s. Started out with a company called Heinz Nurseries, Heinz Horticulture. Moved to another company called Treetown USA, which is now called Verde. All large-scale ornamental national organizations. And about 5 years ago, I received a call from Magnolia Gardens Nursery asking if I was interested in coming to work here. And, I wasn't looking. I entertained the conversation. At the time, I was traveling a lot, and I never saw my wife, my son, and realized that wasn't sustainable either. And so that was one of the biggest reasons why I made the decision to move over to Magnolia, plus just the opportunity there.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I just wanted to just understand, because in our classrooms, when we ask our students why they chose horticulture, recently I teach a course, Professions in Horticulture, and we have several transfer students from other disciplines, business, engineering, law. The words they've used sometimes, feel like they say, oh, I was sad, I was unhappy with this, so that's why I found happiness in working with plants, learning about plants, which you can do in multiple departments, but horticulture, what's special about that? And if you can go back to your time when you switched your majors, what drove you to do that?
Yeah, so the plants, absolutely. There's something about it you're just connected to. It's nature. It's just where we come from, and you think back to the Garden of Eden and that connection. And so I think we go drawn back to that. But honestly, a lot of it has to do with the people. And just the demeanor, the type of people that are in this industry. They truly care about what they do. They care about each other. And not to say that other industries don't get me wrong, but there's just something special about the group. And even in this industry now, it's a small group. It's very small.
Yeah.
And you're going to have those relationships for the rest of your life.
So you have had a long career in this, and I think there's, we are talking about horticulture innovations. You must have witnessed several innovations. What are some of the key things that you observed in your career so far that have really enhanced the green industry, the ornamental industry, both in the state but nationally as well?
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's definitely been innovations in fertility and the chemistries that we're able to use to produce our crops. There's been a lot of innovation in mechanization. More so where labor's more expensive,
Yeah.
Where labor's cheaper, you don't see as much, but there's definitely been a lot of innovations there. And just in breeding and genetics and selection of new varieties, if you look at any garden center today,
Yeah.
you're going to see a palette of hundreds and hundreds of options, whereas 30 years ago, maybe you saw 50 or 60 plants you could choose from.
Yeah.
And so that's been huge. And I'd say the other innovation is not directly related to horticulture, but it's just the fact that we're beginning to embrace the personal aspect of the business. We're science-based,
Yeah.
and most of the folks have a science background. We're not as great working with people, and we're not as great of manipulating through difficult situations like that. So we're, I would say, innovating from the standpoint of the industry, things that other industries have known for decades that we're starting to become more in tune to
Yeah.
also.
You mentioned breeding and genetics, and I think when we think of the term horticulture, a lot of people conjure the idea of just flowers or just thinking about mowing lawns. Can you elaborate, where did we lose the meaning of horticulture in society when everybody starts their day with a cup of coffee, or people are enjoying wine in the evening? I mean, it's all horticulture, tea ceremonies, tea parties, or all these aspects. Where did we lose the term? Where did we lose the connection?
And I don't know if we ever understood horticulture, the word horticulture itself.
Yes.
Most people have no clue what that is.
Yes.
And even me growing up exposed to agriculture, I didn't know the word horticulture.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult word, and when people hear it, they go, oh, okay. So that's one of the challenges, is just the word itself. I think people have kind of been pulled away from their roots just because we're not as rural as we used to be, a lot more urbanization, and we take so many things for granted. And then also we don't market ourselves very well. And so you kind of lose the roots and the meaning of agriculture and horticulture because I think of our marketing efforts. So I'm not really, it's a good question. We're just a fast-paced society nowadays, and honestly, agriculture and horticulture has a slow-paced side to it.
Yeah.
And we have to embrace that and market it better.
Well, that's why we started this podcast series as well. So one, we can learn, but also just inform the public of what we're doing. Of course, they have to listen to it to get to that. So hopefully some of these efforts will contribute to that.
Yeah. No, I have to think more about that question too, and where we lost it and where we've been, hundreds of years ago. I think it was more embraced than what it is now.
Yeah. So you just mentioned about the disconnect with the word horticulture and the society, and I think if you go around the world, horticulture industries and horticulture are commonly used. There are specific departments of horticulture, like in the U.S., the number of departments is reduced over a period of time because we have integrated everything into generalized plant biology. And just like botany, nobody uses the term anymore, yet those degrees are available. If you go outside of the United States, those terms are used. Is there a sort of advantage to preserve the degrees programs aligned with what the industries are called? Because our industry is called horticulture industry.
I mean, I would think there is, especially if we can just market the horticultural department, the horticultural segment, and separate it out more so. Again, it takes an effort to communicate it. And, I think some of the things that are going on here now to communicate horticulture deeper into the university.
Yeah.
The spirited learning, you guys are bringing in folks from all over the campus, plus the community. So they're learning about horticulture.
Yeah.
And so more of that, I think, is what's needed just nationally and globally, too.
I think one of the other missing pieces is that we have to get away from it's just not lawn mowing. It's not just flowers. It's the breeding and genetics, as you mentioned, as well, because now we have to develop disease-resistant, like boxwood, for example. There's a challenge with those and ornamental plants. So there is the same techniques we use for food crops, such as row crops, are also needed for horticulture crops. They're just more difficult because you can cross a rice or a wheat line to itself for multiple generations without losing anything. You can't do that with tree fruits. Or with ornamentals, you have to do this cross-breeding quite a bit to do that. So it's actually an advanced genetics principles that you have to apply to horticulture crops. What do you think, gene editing, would that benefit the horticultural world as well, especially in your ornamental world?
Yeah, I think it does and will, and there's always the stigma of genetic modification and getting past that hurdle. And I think there are some lines that we shouldn't cross, as humans and within the industry. But I think the majority of the cases we're on the right track just to improve the variety, the yield, the selection, etc. I think there are a lot of applications. The challenge, I think, with horticultural itself, it's a fairly fragmented industry, both from a business standpoint and just from a plant mix and palette standpoint. You think of corn and wheat and sorghum, it's one crop with millions of acres. You think of petunias and roses and ferns, and within those you have multiple selections. And so finding the resources to invest in a small crop like that is difficult because the scale is not millions of acres, it's hundreds of acres maybe.
I think the purposes are different too. But if you go to, for example, in horticulture, of course, we have flowers and ornamentals. We have the nuts. Of course, Texas's pecan being the state official state nut, and then we've got fruits and vegetables, which we also grow in Texas or nationwide. Then we've got controlled environment production is coming in as well for food crops primarily. And then at the end, we have a big wine industry that is really becoming very large in Texas, but that's always grown and in the United States. So we have this very diverse, and you're right, the individual market is very different, but the purpose is very different. You brought up a very interesting point, the example of sorghum, wheat, and corn. That's the philosophy that started in the 1960s, that we need to provide calories to people. But we haven't really reached the point of nutrition, and that's where I think horticulture or flavor, yes, or just the visual impact. I mean, this is there are so many studies now showing, for example, Professor Charlie Hall in our department has shown interaction with plants, working with plants is very good for mental wellness, mental health, especially given the anxious state of our civilization right now. I think there's a really important piece that it can play. So in terms of all of that, what do you think? Horticulture, should we be emphasizing it more? Of course, because you're in that business, but also from a perspective of really ensuring the wellness of the society.
Yeah, 100%. And there's not enough of that, again, marketing and communication out there. And I think our ancestors knew that, and they embraced it, and they responded and lived in that type of environment with more horticulture and connection. And in our busy world today, we don't, just because we're comfortable being in a high rise or a box, and the plants aren't there, and we just become used to it, and we don't realize how that just decays ourselves. And so, yes, I believe that needs to be emphasized more and more.
One other aspect, and it's been shown from several studies, that growing high volume but low value crops requires a lot of inputs. For example, if you're doing row crops, and this is not anything negative about that. We need our grains. But if you really want to improve local economies, where you grow these high-value crops, flowers or ornamentals or horticultural crops that are both rich in calories and nutrition, but they're high value. So with smaller footprint, you can generate more income. I mean, is that something you also foresee that could really play a role in really raising the economies and supporting the economies in areas where we really need to uplift people from out of poverty?
Sure, no, I believe that's definitely a venue, and the challenge is finding those opportunities and being able to know what's out there for producers like us to be able to begin producing. we sometimes have a disconnect between what academia is working on and being able to develop, and by the time we realize it, it's on a shelf somewhere collecting dust. And so I think there's a huge opportunity there, especially you mentioned localized production. The more of that we can do, the better, just from a supply chain standpoint. We just have to figure out how to get connected to it.
You brought up a very interesting idea about, so in my entrepreneurial and academic experiences, I just feel there's such a chasm between understanding. So have you worked a lot with academic groups?
Not enough.
Okay.
I mean, I would say maybe more than most, which is still not enough. The opportunity this week that we had to visit with some of the graduate students and so forth, I'm lucky to do that once a year.
Yeah.
And if it's not facilitated by somebody else, I just don't have the time, or just it's not on my radar to do it. But the importance of it, when I have these opportunities and events like yesterday and today, skyrockets to the top of my list to say we need to do more of that and be more intentional about putting that on the calendar and developing those forums, because we both can stand to learn a lot from each other. So that's a huge chasm that we need to somehow close, but we're all busy. And we're all busy in our own discipline. So,
well, one of the missions of a land-grant university is the explicit mission is to support the economies by supporting businesses, supporting individuals in their healthier choices, having an impact, and training the next generation of people. And that's one of the challenges we face is horticulture as a discipline is a discovery discipline. People go into other disciplines. Very few will say, oh, I want to go and study horticulture. And that also creates a challenge. How do we channel people into those, as a university, train our students in the needs of the industry so that we can feed those businesses and help support them grow as well?
Yeah, it's kind of person by person, just thinking of the conversation here. A lot of the efforts in the past have tried to touch a lot of people with one event. So it's all about the numbers. Hey, we reached 1,000 people or so forth, which, hey, that's great. But where the real connection is when there's a small group or a one-on-one conversation that you build that relationship, then that's going to spawn a lot more conversation, a lot more connection and relationship. And so to me, those have a lot more value than a lot of these big events where you're clicking a lot of numbers. Don't get me wrong, there's value to that too, but we have to put more effort into these tighter relationship exercise.
In terms of relationship, what do you think about the public-private relationship between universities and academia working closer together, not at the end of the day when something is developed, but incorporating that as part of the curriculum?
Yeah, no, I think that's excellent, because there's that, again, chasm. There's a disconnect between what academia is working on and what our problems are in industry. And quite often, academia is solving a lot of problems that really maybe they need to be solved, but there's no application today for it. So again, it goes up on the shelf and it gets lost. So if we're able to connect and share our pain points and problems and understand what's being worked on, then we can find at that intersection where we can collaborate and work together. That's a huge missing, I believe.
So I think there are some efforts we're trying to make through entrepreneurship programs within our department to bring the industry's issues in front of our students for two reasons. One, it directs their knowledge gain in terms of what they're going to learn, but also it engages them longer term into what they're doing has a purpose as well. I think it's all about finding a purpose as well. And solving problems that can impact so many people. Our businesses, our economies can be really useful.
Well, purpose and appreciation, and just, one of the conversations yesterday with one of the postdoc students, and we were talking about something that we're working on, and he was sharing what he's working on, and all of a sudden he's like, this is the first time that I've had this connection where somebody is actually interested in what I'm doing day to day that can be applied in the industry. And just that light bulb went off, and so we have a connection right there. And so just that recognition and that connection from that conversation alone, I think is going to stimulate something.
And you've had a long career in horticulture after a degree in horticulture. What kind of messaging can you provide to our undergraduates or postdocs? I know you've talked to these people, you've touched upon that, but if there was a sort of a cogent message where there are certain things they can do while they're in school or college right now or doing their jobs, What could that be?
Yeah, definitely just spending time interacting with the industry and even just with professors and staff more than what we do as students. I mean, when we're here, we're concerned about our grades and we want to study and learn what the book says, which there's value to that, but it's okay to not make an A sometimes because you're spending that time going to visit a nursery or going to visit a producer or spending some time building a relationship with a professor. And so you only have a certain amount of hours in the day, and if it's all studying the books, it's not going to serve you as well as if you're building that network and that relationship, and then you're able to see what's out there. If you're visiting nurseries and interacting with the industry, you're going to be able to guide yourself better into the classes you're going to take and the career path you want to go down. I can't tell you how many seniors I talk to, and I ask, what do you want to do? Where do you want to be in the future, in 5 years, in 10 years? And I don't know. They're seniors. Yeah. Right? And actually, I can honestly say I was in the same boat. That's part of the reason why I got my master's. I wasn't 100% sure where I wanted to go. And so I would just be more involved and not worry about graduating in 4 years. 5 years is okay. 6 years, take an internship every semester if you can. Every other semester, it's worth it.
So a lot of practical, hands-on experience along with book smart, but also street smart in a way.
It's a balance in a mix.
What kind of so that's about the people, but as you look at the industry today, what are some of the needs, especially in the green industry, you foresee we need innovations in?
Yeah, so I think innovations in nutrition. We have protocols and recipes to produce a crop that has sufficient yields and we can make our profit margin. However, those methodologies, those fertilizers that we've used go back to the 40s and 50s. And there's something, I think, more innovation that can come across to help us utilize alternative fertilizers and plant interactions. What they all are, I don't know, but we've been kind of stuck on this for a long time, this methodology. So I think there's a need for innovation there. And then certainly just on the mechanization side, as labor becomes more and more difficult to find and more expensive. The problem with large nurseries, mechanization is difficult because we're typically growing out in a field.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's not like you have concrete and can run these robots and conveyors. We do have some, but not enough. And so we're going to figure that out too.
So you said robotics would be one to address the labor aspects, and then some other mechanizations that can help in all types of terrains would be one. But then soil nutrition is the other part.
I see nutrition being huge. A lot to learn there, just especially from just the microbiological side and the organic side. You mentioned the word organics, and most of our producers in ornamental horticulture are like, no, I can't make a profit growing organically because I just can't put my crops at risk. I think there's an intersection somewhere where we can produce our crops with more of an organic approach than what we do now. We just haven't figured out how to do it. We're following our old recipes.
Oh, wow, okay. Well, this is more of a tricky question. So if you are hiring some person out of an undergrad level, what level of qualifications are you looking at them? And this is in horticulture. Let's say you have a greenhouse manager who's going to be a grower, who's got a degree in horticulture. What type of sort of expertise are you looking in them?
We're looking for a sound base in horticulture. They don't have to be able to recite the book and know every plant problem or how to solve everything. That's what books are for as well, to reference and use. So we want a good, solid horticultural base, but we also want somebody that's able to translate that into a conversation with people that they're going to work with. Be able to lead people through the horticulture, through the processes, and be able to truly be a team player. I mean, you'd be surprised at how many people aren't team players that come out of school.
What I'm hearing is book knowledge is good, but soft skills
are
critical.
Is better, honestly.
Yeah.
And I look for soft skills more than I look for technical skills when we're hiring.
That's very interesting because a lot of 4.0 GPA folks are not able to get employed sometimes because of that lack of soft skills part on that. But if somebody has a master's or a PhD, are you hiring that level of people as well in your programs?
We do, especially in our lab, in the tissue culture lab. We have several PhDs. We continue to hire PhDs because there is definitely the technical and the research side, which has to be done. We prefer they have some soft skills as well because we're working with hundreds of people. But yes, there's definitely that need.
So in the horticulture world, I know you're on the aesthetic side of things, which is the wellness piece, but also really making things beautiful. And I think you showed a photograph yesterday as you ended your seminar, which was just a simple garden with 2 chairs and a table in it. What do you want to convey from that type of an image? Where why do these landscapes, why do these ornamentals matter?
Yeah, so we kind of reworked our core documents a couple of years ago at the business, and we created a redefined purpose. And our purpose is to provide inspiration and opportunity to have a more beautiful life. And so we recognize that beauty, honestly, at the end of the day, is what we strive towards for comfort and for connection as well. And so our products are beautiful in themselves, and so that provides aesthetic beauty as well. So that's one fork, if you will, of our purpose. The other is the beauty within ourselves as an individual, as a community. And quite often that's overlooked. So we're trying to grow a beautiful plant and a beautiful person and provide opportunities for both of those. Because at the end of the day, you go back to the Garden of Eden where we came from and originated. That's our roots. And we've deviated from that substantially as a society, as a world. We want to bring ourselves back and closer to that. And you mentioned that picture at the end. And honestly, when you look at a picture like that and you just focus for 5 seconds and take a breath, you can literally feel your heart rate reduce. You can feel your blood pressure reduce. And there's something to that we need more of in today's busy society.
Yeah, just behind you we have some flower beds, which and that's the purpose, to really demonstrate that there is, or just convey the message of nature's beauty.
Yeah, something that we badly need in society today, and society doesn't realize how badly we need it.
Let's sort of wrap it up on a positive note. What do you foresee for the ornamental industry? I mean, where are we going to get resource? Well, I don't know if it's a positive note, but there's a lot to be done because we have these extremes of weather conditions that are challenging the businesses. How do we counter those, and where do we get the resources to solve these problems together? Because there's not like a huge amount of resources available to conduct research sometimes. And I want to go back to that over public-private relationships. Do you think there's an opportunity to work together in that side?
I think there is an opportunity. And where do we get the resources? That question's a good one. If you look at our industry, especially from the production side, the growing side, we're at the beginning of the supply chain. Typically at the beginning of the supply chain, margins are fairly thin. And then you look at our product and what we sell. I mean, you can go buy this arrangement here in Walmart for $9.99. On an expensive day, close to Valentine's, maybe it's $19.99. You can't buy a hamburger for that.
That's right.
And the hamburger is probably not good for you either, right? And so just the value that we get and that we provide for the communities is more than what we get paid for. And so the fact that our margins are thin means there's not a lot left over to invest and to spend on relationships and innovations and the next step. And so, I mean, this isn't a plug for pricing. Well, maybe it is, but we are undervalued as an industry, and I guarantee you that somebody is going to pay $29 for that on a regular day instead of $9.99 and be just as satisfied as they were with that hamburger meal that they ate. And so as an industry, we've shot ourselves in the foot. We need to do a better job on managing and marketing our product and receiving a fair price for it. And then we also still, regardless of that margin change, we have to value the inputs that we can spend on relationships, like
Yeah.
you're talking about collaboration.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, it's finding those areas to collaborate on that bring true value
Yeah.
through that collaboration, versus there's been so many instances where there's truly no fruit and value that's brought to that project, and then we wasted our money. That's a
Yeah.
bad taste in our
Yeah.
mouth, and
Yeah.
then we don't continue. So going back to these individual conversations and building these relationships between the industry and academia is, I think, where it all starts.
This reminds me what PJ Allison. They are one of the they used to be a big producers of poinsettias. She always says that plants or these ornamentals or plants in general are not a luxury; they are a necessity. And I think that message has been missed because we only think about food for our bodies. We don't think about food for our soul, for our health, which is working with plants, and also we don't really think about that much. And I think that messaging may need to be changed to change the pricing.
No, I agree 100%. You go back to that picture we were talking about yesterday, the pictures here, and when you recognize how you feel as a person when you see that,
Yeah.
even a picture, much less the landscape, right? And that's what we're going after is the landscape. Just how that truly changes you physiologically
Yeah.
and mentally as well. And when you realize the benefits of that, you're a better person, and you're able to then contribute and be more productive and,
Yeah.
and just have a better, more beautiful life. How do we get that message out? How do we market that? That's the $1,000,000 question.
Well, we have started an initiative. Dr. Charlie Hall is leading that initiative, co-leading it from our department with another colleague from public health. It's basically an initiative on nature, health, and plants, basically really bringing the healthful aspect of being in nature, interacting with plants. There is a lot of documentation how landscapes can improve the properties or the value of real estate, how that can really add more value in terms of dollars as well as aesthetics. But I think now they're trying to start working on individual human health. And that's why our mission, which is sustainability, wellness, and food security, wellness is critically saying that if you consume horticultural crops, which provide you nutrition and calories, but when you interact with them, also provides you that mental well-being that is really critical in today's times.
Yeah, no, I agree. Civilizations have realized this for thousands of years, and we've kind of gotten away from it. We need to bring ourselves back. The initiative you just spoke about is exciting and a great way to do that.
Yeah. Well, Brad, thank you so much for speaking with us today. Really grateful for your support and your leadership in the industry as well. And we look forward to seeing great things at Magnolia and hope to connect one-on-one on certain projects and solving problems and involve our undergraduate students and other students at different levels to work with you as well. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Looking forward to it, and pleasure's mine.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Horticultural Innovators. Subscribe if you want to learn more and spread the good word. Thanks and gig 'em.